So here I am at the airport after a day with a client, and in the cab on the way over I started to think about how do I think about different paths, possibilities for AI and all the risks that attach to it. We're getting excited by the sort of chat GPTs and the Claudes from Anthropic and the Midjourneys and Stabilities and so on. And for all the great things that we can do, we can also see that there are drawbacks, and there might be things that we can't easily visualize or imagine right now. So I roughly put this into, I would say, 4 categories. So the first category is the one that's least likely but most severe. That is this sort of intelligence explosion that leads to a significant alignment problem, and we have very, very powerful systems that we allow to connect to existing systems in the world, and somehow that becomes hard for us to control. Now, I think this is reasonably far off. It's also quite unlikely, but of course severity is high. So it seems sensible that people start to think about this, and we should be thinking about it both within the major research groups, the DeepMinds, the OpenAIs and so on, with large tech companies, but we should also be thinking about it within the political establishment, the bureaucratic establishment that runs many of our states, and also in civil society more broadly. And that thinking ought to start to turn into observation, right? Observation, early warning of what kind of things we ought to be looking out for if this problem is to manifest itself. So that's one. It shouldn't take up much of our time, a few cycles, and there should be groups who should look out for these sorts of issues, probably funded by the companies doing the research. So the second area, which is what are the risks of systems getting attached to the physical world and causing problems. I think this is probably quite a reasonably likely possibility. It seems rather easier to manage because all of these physical systems actually are likely to be gated and controlled by people, where there is an audit trail, or there's an audit trail of the cloud provider that can deal with that. The third scenario, which is really about how these systems will interact with the workforce and the challenges and risks of dislocation. So I think this is going to be a highly likely scenario. It's not going to lead to mass permanent unemployment, but it may well lead to lots and lots of jobs changing. And so in that case, we need to think about safety nets, but not just financial safety nets, but also cultural, emotional, psychological safety nets. People's jobs are more than their dollars and their wages. They're also how they feel about themselves. And swapping a job that you care about, that's defined you, for something in a completely different sector, can lead to a lot of uncertainty. And I think that's quite the likeliest of all outcomes, and so it's something that we should start to be stepping into now. And then there's a less likely outcome that connects to jobs, which is, what if AI ends up being so brilliant at everything that humans can do? We don't create the new jobs. We don't go from being bank tellers hit by the ATM into being loan officers or whatever else, but rather AI just sort of overwhelms our capabilities, and we have nothing to do. Now, I think that is actually quite unlikely, and certainly quite unlikely in the short term. So the way that I look at that particular risk is that we have to start to do some long-term thinking and long-term planning. But again, it's not about policy. It's about small numbers of people thinking in the long term about the sorts of things we ought to be looking out for in order to mitigate that risk if that world ever emerges. I mean, the beauty about these 4 possibilities is that they actually lend themselves to slightly different solutions, and in a way they're not quite as unanswerable. They're not quite as unanswerable as they might be made out to be if you look at the AI problem as being the amorphous challenge of an uncontrollable technology, which it certainly isn't right now.